Check, check. Good morning, you all. Hey, you can hear me.
Quite well.
Remember last month? Anyway, good morning again. Welcome to First Unitarian on this lovely Sunday morning with a little bit of fog thrown in here and there, and the beginning of October. I do want to say that welcome also those of you who may be tuning in online through YouTube, and thank you to Walter back there in our electronics booth for monitoring our screens and our sound and all that, and the team that he's got back there. Anyway, turn to your neighbors and wave. There you go. And I do want to say that if you are a visitor, you'll find in the pew rack in front of you several items about our denomination and our church. And we have this handy-dandy yellow card that you can fill out if you want us to keep in touch with you. Include your email, and we'll send you our FYI and our order of service in advance and other materials that you may need. And if you have any further questions, please join us for the coffee hour, which follows the worship service today back in the fellowship hall, and I'll say more about that later. Until then, let's continue with worship.
And hi, I'm Reverend Tim. I'm the senior minister. Let me add to Phil's welcome. And as Phil lights our chalice, let's say the words for chalice lighting together. And did we remember to put fuel in? I don't know if we did. No, we did not.
Let me give you a little.
This is an addition to the ritual.
Now, as Phil lights our freshly fueled chalice, let's say the words for lighting together. We are Unitarian Universalists. Look, hearts that love and hands that are ready to serve. Together, we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in our world. And while we're reciting together, Phil, why don't you lead us in the covenant of our congregation?
I just got an updated script this morning, so I hope you don't mind this informality this morning. Okie doke. Let us join together in sharing the covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Now today, on our minds, in our hearts, and with our spirits, instead of that grand language, some might just say, these are things we need to pray about. We think of the ways of the world, the state of the nation, the serenity of our own souls. Going to the last minute with the potential of a government shutdown, now postponed for 45 days, makes us look forward to elections in the hope that so many of the people will wake up and choose representation and betterment over particular ideologies and obstruction. Among the holidays of world religions we can recognize are, for Jewish people, both those who follow the Hebrew faith and those who choose only cultural heritage, Sukkot, their feast of booths, which celebrates harvest, commemorates the Exodus, and emphasizes their people's reliance on their God. It began Friday evening and continues for a week until this coming Friday evening. For some Muslims, this past Tuesday sunset through Wednesday marked Eid Milad-ul-Nabi, the birth anniversary of their prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. However, in Pakistan Friday, more than 50 people were killed and more than 50 wounded in 2 apparent bombings at religious services. Some Muslims see such festivity around their prophet as somehow blasphemous. And it is thought these attacks were by Muslims who considered it less of a blasphemy to kill. Full details aren't known, but it's thought this is related to separatist insurgency with suspicion that the Islamic State was involved. Weather is always something we watch. This time we note the flooding in New York, including New York City and New Jersey. Last I saw, the good part is no deaths have been reported, but there is plenty of damage, loss, and interruption to daily lives. We hold members, supporters, and friends of our congregation near, as so many of us face issues of health, of relationships, of loneliness, of economy, of life. Let's be good to one another, help if we can, and honor our togetherness even though each of us is so different from one another. You might have your own items for meditation, contemplation, and prayer, so we include the unsaid here as we are in community. We can share burdens and be glad for accomplishments. We are together in fact and in spirit. And now please join us for our opening hymn. Today it's number 27 in our gray hymnal, and lyrics will be on the screen. I am that great and fiery force. If you can and you're willing, please stand.
Good morning.
Morning.
This morning's story is We Are in the Goo, adapted from the work of Elizabeth Sahtouris. We all learned in school that caterpillars turn into butterflies. Most of us remember that this change is called metamorphosis. We've probably seen the chart with the egg becoming the caterpillar becoming the chrysalis, and the chrysalis becoming the butterfly. But what actually happens inside the chrysalis during metamorphosis? Most of us didn't learn that part. Imagine you're a caterpillar. You're living your peaceful caterpillar life, chomping some leaves, getting some sun. One day, you suddenly wake up and think, I am the hungriest I have ever been in my entire life. You eat and eat and eat, until finally, your body says, please stop eating, I'm exhausted. You, now a full and tired caterpillar, curl up under a leaf to rest. You don't realize it, But this is the end of your life as you know it. Your skin starts to get really tough and stiff until it becomes the chrysalis, which is like a protective case. At this point, your digestive system goes wild and releases all its acids until that case is full of them. Then the acids start to dissolve your body. At this point, you're just barely still a caterpillar. You're more like a tiny case of goo that scientists call nutritive soup. Your caterpillar body is breaking down. Inside this goo, a new kind of cell begins to break out of your body. Scientists call these cells imaginal discs. Your fading caterpillar immune system doesn't recognize imaginal discs because you never needed them as a caterpillar. Your immune system thinks, oh no, intruders, I must fight back. And it does try to fight back. It weakly squashes some of the imaginal cells. But the imaginal cells know that their time has come, and they keep breaking out of your goo body faster and faster. Finally, your caterpillar body gives up and stops fighting back. Imaginal cells start to consume all the left behind caterpillar goo. One of these imaginal cells starts to grow into a wing. Another one becomes a long, delicate antenna. Eventually, all these imaginal cells come together, and you assume your final form as a new butterfly. Our world is going through some big changes right now. Old laws about marriage and families are being rewritten. Scientists are learning all kinds of new things about gender and human brains. Old ideas about college and getting jobs and buying houses are proving not to really work right now. And change can be hard. The world's old caterpillar body is trying to fight back, saying that new ideas and new ways of living are dangerous and scary. But it doesn't have to be scary, because you awesome children, are the imaginal discs. Your time is coming to create a new and beautiful world. We don't know exactly yet what that world will look like. But have faith that you will come together to create something new and different and utterly magnificent. Blessed be.
Thank you, Evelyn. And let's sing for the children, as this is the time when they and their teachers leave our service for religious education. Follow Krista.
As you go on your way, may you be filled with gladness. Go in joy, go in joy. May fortune bless your day with peace and loving kindness. Go in love, go in love.
Please join me for a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. The reading I brought today is News of the Infinite by Gary Kowalski. Asked if he was lonesome in his hut on Walden Pond, our neighbor Henry Thoreau famously replied, "How could I be lonely? Don't I live in the Milky Way?" Thoreau doubtless would have been encouraged by the recent discovery of Kepler-22, a planet just 600 light years from Earth, right in the Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold, but a balmy 72 degrees on the surface, just right for organic chemistry to flourish. It's just one of 139 potentially habitable worlds sighted since the Kepler spacecraft started looking for them a couple years ago. And given the size of our galaxy, there are almost certainly billions of others. Life is probably widespread in our universe, scientists now agree. Back when I was a boy, a famous experiment produced amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, by flashing an electric spark through a beaker of ammonia, methane, hydrogen, and water vapor, thought to be the primitive components of Earth's atmosphere. The theory was that long ago, a lucky lightning strike in a shallow pond produced the first protoplasm. But now we know that amino acids are everywhere, in the tails of comets and in the dust of interstellar space. Wherever conditions are right, evolution takes off. And conditions are right all over, not just on places like Enceladus, a moon of Saturn where liquid water has been proven present in geysers. Many cosmologists agree that the cosmos appears propitiously suited to life, right down to the fundamental constants that govern gravity and allow stars and planets to form at all. Of course, this doesn't necessarily mean that the universe was designed for beings like us. But it does put a new twist on the old legends like the Christmas star. Does it really matter whether a nova appeared over Bethlehem all those years ago? For me, the real wonder is that we are all born out of stars, every molecule in our bodies forged in the furnaces of the heavens. What this means is that we humans belong here. We are not just accidental tourists in this world. We have grown out time and space as naturally as grass pushes up through city sidewalks. And we are linked to nature, not only in our biology, but in our minds and spirits also, which conceive space probes like Kepler and seem eternally fascinated by the big questions of where we come from and where we fit into the greater scheme. Who cares whether astronomers find another habitable planet anyway? It would take 22 million years for our fastest rockets to reach Kepler-22. Not even figuring in pit stops. But the answer is people care. For beyond the business cycle, the election cycle, and other ephemeral headlines, human beings remain creatures hungry for news of the infinite. And for me at least, it is satisfying to know not only that we live in the Milky Way, in some important sense, the Milky Way in all its brilliance and unfathomable extent, also lives in us. Let's observe 1 minute of silence.
Blessed Spirit of my life, give me strength through stress and strife. Help me live with dignity. Let me know serenity. Fill me with a vision. Clear my mind of fear and confusion. When my thoughts flow restlessly, let peace find a home in me.
I'm reading from, hold on, what's that stuff in your belly button? Science Has the Answer by Patricia, MD, writing in the Washington Post back August 14th of this year. There's been a remarkable amount of science devoted to the seemingly unimportant topic of what lurks in our belly buttons. One intrepid scientist analyzed his own navel fluff. Georg Steinhauser of the Vienna University of Technology in Austria collected 503 pieces of belly button junk over 3 years. Upon elemental analysis, he found that belly button lint contains house dust, skin cells, and sweat, in addition to the fibers of shirts. After additional and no doubt scintillating investigations of his friends, family, and colleagues, he concluded that abdominal hair was a prerequisite for accumulating navel lint, and that old t-shirts or dress shirts were less likely to produce fluff than new clothing. The scientist even shaved his own belly for the purposes of confirming his abdominal hair hypothesis. What's in the fluff? Besides abdominal hair and new clothing, there are a few other factors that shape why and how we accumulate junk in our belly buttons. Carl Kruszelnicki of the University of Sydney in Australia surveyed 4,799 people and observed that being male, having an innie rather than an outie, and older age were all associated with accumulating more lint. His work was among the winners of the 2002 Ig Nobel Prize. which is awarded to humorous scientific achievements. And as further proof that true selfless pursuit of knowledge knows no bounds, in 2018, a mechanical engineer from the Indian Institute of Technology, Patna, decided he was going to ask the real tough questions. What are the physics behind belly button lint production? And can it be mathematically modeled? He determined that microscopically body hair acts like a sawtooth to extract lint fibers from the fabric during the periodic motion of our respiratory cycle, inhaling and exhaling, wherein our shirts rub constantly against our abdomens, because the hair in that area tends to stoop toward the depression of the navel. The lint fibers, and my lint fibers are in the way here, hooked on to them, travel deep into the belly button, eventually losing contact with the fabric. As the influx of lint continues, it intermingles with sweat and skin cells, and the result is a nice, compact mass of fluff that accumulates with mathematical precision. It begins linearly, then grows quadratically with time, if you must know. And aren't you glad you are so informed today?
Thank you, Phil, for that reading. I hope we'll go from the ridiculous to the sublime in terms of science in the news, but we'll see. For the words I bring today, there are a few more scientific studies I got from newspapers, magazines, and online that might fit in the ridiculous category. And there are many that can be considered practical about understanding ourselves, our world, our universe. Plus, there are a few that point to the sublime aspects of scientific study. Before I start the citations, though, I'll give an introduction to this in the news series that will be occasional about once a month through this church year. You know that my professional position before coming to the Toledo Unitarians as the full-time called and settled minister was religion editor for Toledo's then printed daily newspaper, The Blade, and you, this congregation, ordained me and welcomed me as an affiliate minister while I was still a working journalist. And now, while I try to address things with a perspective more on spirituality than on current events, I think that the news should get some pulpit time. There's a cliche about what might be called the learned ministry, that our preaching can be heavy on references to books and scholarly reading, and the minister might bring that into more approachable language. The minister as scholar and even professor, the doctor part of my being a reverend doctor. And my doctorate is in communications, following up on earlier education in journalism with a focus on magazines. But I also try to stay in the news, and my to-read list of articles has accumulated so much that I've found it might be through bringing some of that to the pulpit, having current events as a topic, that I might make better use of the media subscriptions that help my ministry. And for this, in the news entry on science, I can add that one of my university degrees is a master's in library and information science. So yes, strange as it may seem, I can claim to be a credentialed scientist. I don't own a lab coat, though. So, though I have a scholarly background, and I hope that my sermons don't seem to be term papers, I have done probably my full share of that type of preaching. For this In the News series, I'll be speaking more as an informed consumer of media with experience in the news trade, instead of a preacher attempting to commit theology with newspaper in hand. I'm sure you remember well that I led a service titled In the News only 4.5 years ago on March 19th, 2019. In that sermon, I began with a reference to the famous quotation about news and religion by the theologian Karl Barth, who said that ministers should preach with the Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other. His point, which is not mine, was that the Bible should be a filter in interpreting the news. I'm taking a different approach in a Unitarian Universalist way, using some of the popular press, newspapers, magazines, and a little bit of online or televised reporting to show that it can be through the mainstream media that we learn more about life, the universe, and everything. And having learned, the news can help us in being responsible about our sacred and responsible search for truth and meaning. Our newspaper in one hand might inform our sacred texts held in the other, which is the opposite of Karl Barth's point. The news can be a filter in our variety and value of religious living. Science is important to Unitarian Universalism. It's part of the direct experience as a source of how we are religious Unitarian Universalists. The scientific method is a way we can live authentically in the world, that rather than just having a belief in a concept and asserting that as truth, we can use science to find fact rather than just belief. And if we later learn via science that we're wrong, the scientific method accepts that it's error, and that method is the way to continue the search for what is real. Following scientific news helps us to know how those facts are tested, what new discoveries are made, how it all can fit where and how we are and live today. Science news is sometimes directly related to religious aspects too. Consider from the Washington Post, the latest social science is wrong. Religion is good for families and kids. This could be a case, though, of which research you examine, as the article is a response to social science studies that state that religion is bad. For some science in progress, our of-the-moment discoveries need some time for encompassing literature reviews, and these are still in the on-the-ground investigation rather than summarizing in a bigger frame. Also consider there's no such thing as free will. And remember how important free will, the individual choice, is core to our liberal religion. The subtitle of that Atlantic article is but we're better believing in it anyway. The key sentence of the article might be this one: the sciences have grown steadily bolder in their claim that all human behavior can be explained through the clockwork laws of cause and effect. Brain studies and nature versus nurture continually debate this. The point we might take is that, yes, behavior can be predicted, but we still have choice, and that choice is free will. From and in the news, we also learn, yes, from mainstream media, that science isn't always at its best. The Washington Post had a series bringing to light an old collection in the Smithsonian Institution. 90 years ago, the Smithsonian was building what it called a racial brain collection and had amassed 255 of them, with the collection directed by an early 20th century anthropologist who believed in white superiority. That collection is part of the Smithsonian having human remains among its holdings, more than 30,000 remains, the Post reported, with most taken without consent. The Smithsonian is now apologizing and determining what measures to take and ethics to apply. Its secretary, Lonnie G. Branch III, wrote in the Washington Post, "It was abhorrent and dehumanizing work, and it was carried out in the Smithsonian's name. As secretary of the Smithsonian, I condemn these past actions and apologize for the pain caused by people at the institution who acted unethically in the name of science, regardless of the era in which their actions occurred." He also stated, "Our forthcoming policy will finally recognize these remains not as objects to be studied, but as human beings to be honored. It is a long overdue shift, and I regret that human bodies were ever treated with such disrespect at our institution." He affirmed that the work to be done by the Smithsonian is also about interrogating and dismantling the racism that inspired these collections in the first place. It's through the news, in part, that bad science, whether it's unethical practice over the course of time, or it's poorly designed and biased research, or it's unfounded for other reasons, such as data being falsified to prove an assertion that is wrong, it comes to light and public exposure forces change. And the popular press reports on scientific disagreements. A recent article tells of a scientist denouncing his own research, saying a paper he wrote with 7 other scientists focused too narrowly on climate change and didn't give the opportunity for consideration of other possible factors. Reports that a hoped-for material called a room temperature semiconductor had finally been scientifically proven were debunked by other scientists, and also included some of the original authors asking the journal where this was published to make a retraction. There's an anthropology conference that had included a panel defending sex as binary, and the organizers realized that the session didn't have scientific merit and was harmful to transgender people. The organizers also related that binary claim to earlier study of eugenics, which is a bad part of Unitarian Universalist history too, when prominent ministers and other leaders promoted superiority through selective human breeding as good, And later we realized that it's demeaning and not open to inherent worth and dignity. Eugenics continues to pop up today with assertions of racial superiority of white people. The news is needed for exposure of such wrongs. There is a lot of breadth to science in the news. It's not all just science says and scientists say. The breadth can be put in some ways into a few categories. This gets back into the span of the ridiculous to the sublime that I brought up at the beginning of this talk. Let's get ridiculous for a moment, but with mostly good scientific reasons. A few headlines from that category beyond the belly button lint Phil told us about. Science reveals how to roll the perfect joint in Scientific American. That's important to science because users of medical marijuana are helped by cannabinoids, and effective delivery can be affected by how well a rolled joint is engineered to burn and deliver that concentration consistently. Maybe not so ridiculous after all. A Stanford psychologist says he's cracked the code of one-hit wonders, The Atlantic. This might help you write a pop music hit, but a one-hit wonder isn't a career maker. For career music, you might benefit more by attending an upcoming academic conference this coming February in New Zealand, focused on the music and influence of Taylor Swift. The term for this gathering of scholars is a Swiftposium. There's also to be one this November at Indiana University. Scientists have recorded seismic activity directly related to her concerts, the Washington Post article says. It's a spider, not a doctor, captain, or Vulcan, the New York Times. Brazilian scientists discovered 3 new species of spiders in the genus Roddenberryus. Gene Roddenberry was the creator of Star Trek, and the scientists saw characteristics in the spiders that inspired a Star Trek connection. They named the 3 species Kirk, McCoy, and Spock. The article says there are also spider genuses named after climate activist Greta Thunberg and musician David Bowie, whose early band was Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Plus, there is a spider called Strotarchus Beep Beep, named after the Looney Tunes Roadrunner. And Myrmecium Oompa Loompa, a spider found in a Brazilian cocoa plantation. Hey, scientists can have fun. We can't forget the perennials, the Loch Ness Monster, the largest search since 1972 for the purported monster in a Scottish freshwater lake was conducted at the end of August. And I haven't seen any claims of discovery this time around. The New York Times says the first recorded appearance of that sea monster was in the 6th century. But while people have claimed to witness it for 1,500 years, there's never been confirming scientific evidence. And there's UFO research, along with a term change from unidentified flying objects to unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. Our country's National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, had commissioned a panel of 16 scientific experts to study UAPs and said none of the reported objects studied had extraterrestrial origin. And NASA said it will study recent and earlier reports of unidentified aerial sightings. The panel said that better data collection and standards, more reliable science, let's say, will help their work. And NASA indicated it will continue with the question of UAPs by its appointing a director of research for this topic. From ridiculous, we can move to practical. There's science reporting that helps us live better day-to-day lives. A few headlines. The beauty of a silent walk from the New York Times, quoting research and scientists on the effects of walking and silence on combating depression and improving creativity. From the Washington Post, Lab to Table, the promise and the perils of cell-cultured chicken. Now that meat taken not from animals killed for human consumption, but grown from cells, is beginning to be served at restaurants. In a way, I see that as one step nearer to a Star Trek-like replicator. There's probiotics, prebiotics, and postbiotics, the microbe garden in your gut. And without newspapers' help, I can't keep up with the latest on health food and supplements and whether I should pay attention to trends, whether they're science or pseudo, as well as when fake science is exposed. And there's journalism covering what we might call hard science, the work of physicists, paleontologists, chemists, biologists, astronomers, and many other laboratory and field workers. Discoveries in theory and applications in medicine, the work that many of us don't know until news brings advancement in knowledge to greater attention. Studies today are giving greater credence to Einstein's theory of relativity, like an announcement in June that scientists have found what they call a cosmic background of ripples in the structure of space and time, which had been predicted more than a century ago. Astronomer Adam Frank, writing in The Atlantic, said, "The gravitational wave background is huge news for the cosmos, yes, but it's also huge news for you. The nature of reality has not changed. You will not suddenly be able to detect vibrations in your morning coffee that you couldn't see before. And yes, moments like these can and should change how each of us sees our world. All of a sudden, we know that we are humming in tune with the entire universe, that each of us contains the signature of everything that has ever been. It's all within us, around us, pushing us to and fro as we hurtle through the cosmos. I add, that's our way of religion, isn't it? Being one with all. And that's an item in our sublime science news category. Some media have good coverage of the natural sciences in their regular mix of content, as well as in social sciences and other scientific research. We learn a little bit about distant stars and outer space, about deep sea creatures, the ocean floor, and may I have that script? My computer decided that was enough listing today. So, let me get back to this. Okay, some media have good coverage of the natural sciences in their regular mix of content, as well as in social sciences and other scientific research. We learn a little bit about distant stars and outer space, about deep sea creatures, the ocean floor, Earth's core, and on what's located in between, us, on the surface of this planet. What do we take with us going forward? The point, while noting today that there's a lot of science in the news, is that we owe respect to the scientific process, and that we can use our curiosity as scientists and journalists did, and we'll take with us the help of scientists and journalists to inform our living and our religious seeking and sometimes finding. Follow the news. Take in what it tells us about advancements through science. So be it.
And this is the part of the service where we come to talk about how you can support the work of this church. I hope that Walter will put the Q sign, or what do we call that, on the screen. Hold it up there for just a minute now, folks with smartphones, to get a good shot of that. There are other ways to give also. In a few moments you will see an address that you can send your check to during the week. And if you so choose, you can leave an offering in the basket as you leave this place and go forward. And we thank you for your continued support of First Unitarian and its work and its service. So be it.
Is this a congregational scene?
It can be, yes, sure.
Number 355.
What gift can we bring? What present, what token, what words can convey the joy of this day? When grateful we come, remembering, rejoicing, what song can we offer in honor and praise? Give thanks for the past, for those who had vision, who planted and watered so dreams could come true. Give thanks for the now, for study, for worship, for mission that bids us turn praise into deed. This gift we now bring, this present, this token, these words can convey the joy of this day. When grateful we come, remember, rejoicing, this song we now offer in praise and praise.
That wasn't 355, but thank you.
Oh, that sure wasn't, was it?
A token.
Now it's the coming soon part of our service, where we tell you what's on the calendar for next week, we give some announcements, and we also let you know what's up for right after the service. Next Sunday at 9:45 a.m. and the following Sunday, our spiritual forum will be our getting to know one another by way of using conversation cards. So a card will give you the question and the people attending can answer. Then for the 11 a.m. service, we expect to have more visitors than usual. We hope to. And most will be of the pet variety. We'll be having an animal blessing service, our first in 5 years, and it will be here in the sanctuary. Please bring your pets and other animals. Last time there were dogs, cats, rabbits, chickens, and probably a few other types of animal that I'm not remembering. There were also some stuffed animals that children brought, and pictures of pets that have crossed what some call the Rainbow Bridge, or that wouldn't do well in a setting with many other animals and people. So you please bring pets, the animals themselves, the toy animals that provide comfort, the pictures of pets that are in your lives, and we'll have a blessing for all of them at 11 this coming Sunday. And I need to announce a couple of calendar things. One is the Zoom About Sunday for this coming Tuesday is canceled, as we won't have a staff meeting this week. So please link in on a later Tuesday to talk about our Sunday services. And the other, let me pick this up, is related to our Dining for Women, our Together Women Rise, used to be called Dining for Women group, that the calendar says they'll be meeting as usual the third Monday of the month on the 16th, but that's incorrect. Instead, this month, they're having a 20th anniversary celebration of all of the Toledo Rise chapters on Thursday, October 12th from 5:30 to 8 at Little Flower Catholic Parish. So if you're part of Together Women Rise or see this as an opportunity to join in, please note that it's a special celebration this month.
Today is the final day for church directory preparation, and if you are gathered here in the sanctuary, haven't approved your contact information or had a photo taken or submitted, see Tina Baker after the service in the lobby. Please don't make us have to make up information about you and substitute a photograph you don't want. Now, I just stuck that in there. For you watching on YouTube, same idea, but please email Tina or the church office. Also, First Unitarian Church of Toledo is a new co-sponsor of the First Thursday series, Culture at the Crossroads, now held from noon to 1:30, the first Thursday of every month at Monroe Street, United Methodist Church. The next social justice-centered lecture and lunch, this one about universal health care and featuring Dr. Jonathan Ross, is this coming Thursday. Admission is $15. And RSVPs are requested through the First Thursday Toledo at gmail.com. And thanks to the efforts and skills of a few volunteers, there's a new mini food pantry out front in our driveway for people who might be in need of something to eat for themselves or for their families. The former cabinet had pretty much worn out, so our member, Aaron Myers, and a carpenter friend built a new one. Then member Melanie Christensen painted it. At a recent board meeting, someone said she saw the painting being a reference to our stained glass windows, which is a nice touch. Melanie, what we really need now is more food for the pantry. This past week, there was nothing there that should have been. But there were greeting cards, a magazine, and fast food restaurant ketchup packets. That's hardly adequate. You can make the assumption that someone will take what they gathered home to prepare it for the family, including children. So we'd like what's in the pantry to offer nutritious sustenance, and the occasional sweet would be a bonus. Plus, please focus on food only. No random discards, and not even hygiene products. We want to help people be fed. But will you bring directly into the pantry and only if it's full? Should you bring your donations into the building for us to add to the pantry later? Thank you. And the final coming soon entry is for me to once again invite you to join us after the service for coffee. It's a great time to get to meet other folks and to join in conversation and socializing. It's in the fellowship hall, right down the hallway and to your left. You can't miss it. Keep on going.
And now please join me in reciting the words for us figuratively to send some Unitarian Universalist fire into the community while Phil extinguishes the chalice flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the